In the affluent city of Newry lies a row of distinctive houses, loved by those who live there.
Dublin Road is a very, very safe place to live. Every single morning, I went down the stairs and opened the door, just to say that the house was welcome.
The neighbours all knew one another. They looked out for one another. You never had any concern to lock your door. You know, you never ever had any burglaries or break-ins.
One of the houses along the row was occupied by 81-year-old Maire Rankin.
It's lovely to see you all, to celebrate my birthday and indeed my life.
Maire was a cornerstone of the close-knit community and loved by her neighbours.
I had known Maura and the family, oh gosh, for the 34 years that I've been here. She was a quiet, gentle lady and she was a great neighbour.
Maura was like an extra granny in every family. You know, she loved children. She had a beautiful home. She loved plants, she loved flowers. She had the most beautiful yard that she would sit in.
Maire spent many of her 81 years on Dublin Road bringing up her 8 children.
Mummy loved people. She loved being surrounded by people, and our family would be very well known in Newry, I suppose because we're such a big family.
Mummy was quintessential grandmother. I mean, if you gave a child a piece of paper and said, draw Granny, that was what the child would draw, would be a picture of my mother.
But on Christmas Day 2008, Maire Rankin was found dead in her home. She had been brutally battered to death in seemingly bizarre circumstances. With the spotlight on the whole community, life in Newry would never be the same again. It was a typical Christmas Eve, and Maire Rankin's daughter Brenda was preparing for a family Christmas.
The plan was that Mummy would come and stay here with me on Christmas Eve, but she had a very bad cold and a chest infection, so she asked me to collect her on Christmas morning.
Knowing her mum could call on any of her close neighbours should she need them, Brenda agreed to collect Maire on Christmas morning.
Now, I wasn't very happy about leaving her on her own on Christmas Eve, but she insisted that none of us would go and stay with her.
She had been unwell a few days beforehand, and I had been up and down to her. She would have phoned me up here if she needed anything.
As it was, Maire didn't have to spend the evening alone, as next-door neighbour Karen Walsh popped in after noticing a light on.
Christmas Eve, I brought in Christmas cards to her because she always gave us Christmas cards. She thanked me for calling in. She said it's great to have a bit of company.
But Karen said that Maire seemed unwell.
She was sitting in the armchair. She was seriously wheezy. Because when she was talking, like she was catching her breath big time. That's not Maire. Because she was in such a bad state, I was thinking to myself, what am I going to do? I can't leave her here like this. She says, I will be all right, okay? I says, will you just knock on the door next door if you aren't? And I went home to my own house. She shouldn't have been on her own house.
Early Christmas morning, daughter Brenda was concerned when she was unable to reach her mum to arrange to pick her up.
I was checking the time to see would Mummy be awake, and then I was surprised she hadn't rung, so at about 9:15 I rang her and there was no answer. When I came out of the shower, I rang again and there was still no answer. I rang at least 3, possibly 4 times, and my sense of panic was rising. I said, I'm going to have to go to Newry now because I'm really worried about Mummy. I definitely sensed that something was wrong. The whole way to Newry, I was trying to stay calm. I tried to persuade myself that she was either in the shower or had overslept, but I was really fearful that she'd maybe slipped and fallen. I kept saying, if Mummy is taken sick, just let me get there in time. Please let me get there in time. Of course, I had no idea what I was heading to. I had no idea what I was going to find.
Moira's brother-in-law, Arthur, had already driven round to Dublin Road, concerned he couldn't get hold of his sister.
Uncle Arthur was running down the front steps. He had just said to me, "Your mother's gone, she's gone." I said, "I better ring 999. So as I walked along the hall and up the stairs, I made the 999 call.
Ambulance service to 39 Dublin Road, Newry, please, hurry. My mother.
Are you with her now?
I'm going upstairs.
Are you going up to where your mother is?
Yes, I haven't seen her yet.
On entering her mother's bedroom, Brenda was confronted with her worst nightmare.
I ran up the stairs because I was desperate to see if she'd just collapsed. Should I be helping her, hold her hand, would I be there? And then I went into Mummy's bedroom.
Oh my God, she's dead!
Hello?
Everything's everywhere. I think somebody's broken in.
Can you get the police for this Newry one as well? I think she's been broken into. Is your mother conscious?
No, she's dead.
Are you sure she's not okay? Is she breathing?
In Newry, Northern Ireland, the close-knit community of Dublin Road had woken up on Christmas morning to the news that much-loved grandmother Maire Rankin had been brutally murdered in her home.
Maire Rankin never had an enemy that I knew. She had no reason to ever have enemies because she only did good for people. She never, ever would have fought with anyone.
I thought, no, that wasn't possible. It would have been the last thing I would have expected then along this road.
Moira's daughter Brenda had made the shocking discovery.
Mummy's body was just lying on the ground at the foot of the bed, and her body was just lying just here on the ground, and her feet were here in front of me and her head was there. Furniture was lying, there was a table on its side, and I could see that there had been some sort of a struggle. It was clear that Mummy had been beaten. Her face was bruised. She seemed to be naked. The bedspread was partially covering her body.
The 999 call had been directed to Newry Police and picked up by Detective Sergeant, now Detective Inspector, Denise Graham, who was about to be propelled into one of the most shocking murder investigations she had come across.
Shortly after 10:30, I saw a call appear on the screen in relation to a sudden death. I was extremely suspicious of the circumstances of that report. I was concerned that we had a murder on our hands, so directed to secure a scene, preserve all of our evidence, and get anybody that was in the house out of it.
Actually, it was a crime scene, so they escorted us out of the house. There was a police doctor, there were police everywhere. And then the police were appearing in the white boiler suits. It was just like, it was like a television programme.
Brenda's younger brother Dermot arrived at the scene.
As I got to the top of the steps, there were two police standing at the top of the steps, and the two of them were adamant that I wasn't going in. And I kept saying to them, I need to get in there, I need to go to Mummy. And I kept saying, no, we're not letting you in.
I shouted from the hall, Dermot. I can't remember if I said somebody's hurt her or somebody's killed her. I just wanted them to know right from the start, Mummy's dead. I remember him shouting out, "The bastards." I just felt so sorry for him, that desperate need to go in and see his mother.
Moira's neighbours started to go about their Christmas morning, unaware of the full horror of what had happened next door.
When we returned from Mass, then all we could see was all the tape, you know, and it appeared to be like a crime scene. You know, we realised then that something bad has happened. This was just unbelievable.
I thought this is a complete mistake. Maura has taken a weak turn. She had a beautiful marble fireplace in the bedroom. I thought she'd fallen and hit her head.
But the revelation there had been a murder would shock the community to the core.
That just seemed to be so unreal that anybody could have been murdered along the road, and especially of an 81-year-old vulnerable person.
It was a terrible atmosphere, you know, because everybody was worried, you know, about who did this. and that we loved Maire so dearly.
Police needed to act fast to gather evidence, and their attention was soon drawn to the rear of the property.
I could clearly see that the back door was lying ajar. My thought process was that that could have been a way out of the house, but the back here is so private that anybody who had broken into the house, it was an easy escape route for somebody to come out through the back and not be seen by anybody else that was about at all.
With a shocking murder on their hands and a neighbourhood fearing a killer was in their midst, the major investigation team was quickly drafted in and straight away worked on the theory of a burglary gone wrong.
This first one here, you can see that someone had been in and ransacked it. The presents have been gone through, and there's no care has been taken to open the presents. They've just been torn open.
But the scene also reflected the violence that had been inflicted upon Maire.
This is a photograph of a clump of hair. And unfortunately, that's a clump of hair from Mrs. Rankin's head, and it was pulled.
Oh my God, the photographs of the grey lumps of hair. She had beautiful hair. Maire had beautiful hair.
She always kept herself really well, and her hair was always lovely, and she loved clothes, and her makeup was always nicely done. I knew that whoever was in that room had pulled her by the hair, and that was an awful thought, because the scene around me just screamed violence.
But a closer look at the scene threw up a more worrying scenario. It now appeared that the house hadn't been burgled.
This photograph here, that's the hallway, and it shows towards the front door. And very importantly, you will note that there's actually no damage caused to the door.
There was no sign, apart from that wee sitting room, of anything having been disturbed downstairs. No sign of anything having been forced or jemmied or kicked.
And Mrs. Rankin's purse was still there, and her handbag was there. So had that have been a burglar, those items would not have been there.
Suddenly, it became apparent Maire knew her killer and may have let them in.
There was an intercom system, so one of the things that needed pursued was who would have legitimate access for the house, who could have a key.
That left us with a small pool of people to look at it.
Is it family? Is it a friend? Who has it been?
The focus of the investigation shifted, and all those close to Maire became a suspect.
We were under siege. The back of our houses and the front of our houses were sealed off, and none of the cars could move. Everywhere was being searched.
Everybody initially must be a suspect.
Family, friends, we're all suspects. Our relationships with Mummy vary. We would have argued quite a bit.
They asked about neighbours.
I needed to know exactly who had been there and what their relationships were with Mrs. Rankin.
She was asking me about questions. It was like interrogating me.
They questioned myself and my husband with a team of detectives for hours.
I remember thinking it's really important to think of not only who has keys now, but who might have had keys 6 months ago. Maybe they copied the key.
I started to think my DNA was on her skin, on her dressing gown, anywhere, and we had a key.
Is this one of my very close family? You know, is there some financial thing that they'll benefit?
How much cash do you think your mum had? There's something else I don't even want to say.
Who else had keys to that door?
Carmel Rafferty had a key.
The police are coming. Were you worried?
I said, if the police come and arrest me or your daddy, you know that we would never harm a fly.
There's loads and loads and loads of reasons, and they all run through your head, and you're trying to think, why would somebody do this?
With police interviewing those closest to Maire Rankin, forensic officers had made a gruesome discovery as to the murder weapon.
The crucifix was up on the wall above the bed, and it was deliberately pulled down.
The crucifix was then used to beat Maire to death, leaving distinctive marks.
There are 8 pointed thorns that protrude from a circular crown. A part of the mark that was on the deceased chin were made by thorns on the crown of thorns. This was someone thrown down onto the ground, knelt on, her head was forced back, and force was applied to press this down into her chin and rocking it from side to side. Considerable force.
The violence of the assault caused the metal Christ figure to break in two.
It seemed very saddening to me to realise that this amount of violence and rage had been given to an 81-year-old woman. Very sad.
The discovery of the murder weapon sickened the family.
I started to be tormented by the notion of the crucifix.
Why choose a crucifix? It was out of reach. You would have had to climb on top of the bed to get it. There's loads of other things. There were big candlesticks, big chunky brass candlesticks that would have been much more effective than a crucifix.
I find it very strange that the crucifix had been broken and appeared to have been used in the assault. Maire Rankin was known as a religious woman, and I wondered why that had happened.
Is this something really evil? Is it something satanic? Was it something ritualistic?
Suddenly, the story was making news headlines everywhere.
I think our first suspicions, and the suspicions of most people, were that it was some sort of robbery that had gone wrong, or some sort of burglary where she may have disturbed a burglar. And then when details started to emerge about the manner in which the crucifix that was used in the attack on her, people really started to wonder what in the name of God went on in this house. Like, what sort of person would do this?
All the neighbours had been questioned, bar one, those next door. The house was quiet. Police presumed the family was away.
I could hear this male speaking to the uniform officer at the cordon, asking what was going on, so I went over to speak to him. I got him to identify himself to me first of all, so he was Richard Durkin. And I'd asked him basic questions that you would ask of neighbours at any kind of a crime scene. Had he been at home the night before, and had he heard or seen anything strange or unusual?
I knew a little bit about Richard Durkin. He had visited Mummy on quite a few occasions. So he seemed to be very friendly, and he seemed to be very accommodating to an elderly neighbour.
As police talked to Richard Durkin, his wife Karen came forward as a vital witness, revealing she had seen Moira the night before.
She placed herself there in the house and asked, could she have been the last person to see her alive?
We had spoke to no one else who had saw Mrs. Rankin after that. So really, Karen Walsh was treated as a significant witness.
Richard Durkin and Karen Walsh were a wealthy Dublin couple with a young son who used the house in Newry as a weekend bolt hole.
Can I ask you to state your full name, please?
Karen Walsh.
You're here as a witness, and we're conducting a video interview in relation to your knowledge and contact with Mrs. Rankin, okay?
Yep.
Karen's account of Moira's last hours could prove vital in catching Moira's killer.
I went up and she was sitting in the armchair. She thanked me for calling in. She said it's great to have a bit of company. And she pointed out to me that she hadn't gone to the hairdressers that day, and the reason being is that she didn't feel well enough to do it. She hadn't got her hair done. That's not Moira. She was very wheezy, like she was catching her breath big time. And I was thinking to myself, what am I going to do? I can't leave her here like this. I asked her, did she want to come to us next door? So she said, no, they will be all right, okay? And I went home to my own house.
Right, okay.
I regret that I didn't stay with her, that's anything.
I appreciate that it's been difficult, but it's obviously important for us to find out, put all
Yeah.
the pieces together, Karen, to find out what did happen, Maura.
Karen was able to offer evidence of Mrs. Rankin in good spirits, probably not in the best of health, but the room was neat and tidy, there had been no signs of a disturbance, and obviously whatever had happened to Mrs. Rankin had happened after Karen Walsh had left at 1 o'clock.
As one half of a high-flying couple, Karen Walsh was a reputable witness.
Richard was working as a tax consultant. Karen was running a very, very successful pharmacy business. They aimed high, they were bright, intelligent people, a very go-ahead family, doing well and obviously reaping the successes of all their hard work, socialising in the realms that maybe not an awful lot of Irish people would.
With the investigation unfolding, neighbours started to look to one another for answers. And then one came forward and appeared to contradict Karen's account she had left Moira's house by 1 a.m. and slept until midday on Christmas morning.
Christmas morning, about 7:20, my husband, he seen Karen between Mrs. Rankin's and her house. Paul just said that she was sitting on the wall and that she was smoking a cigarette. He could hear a man's voice and he thought they were fighting, that there was some argument going on.
This really alarmed me because Karen Walsh had provided a timeline of her events and being home at 1 o'clock and going to bed. And now I had witness testimony telling me that what Karen Walsh had told me simply wasn't true.
After 81-year-old Maire Rankin was found beaten to death on Christmas morning, the finger of suspicion had been pointed at everyone close to Maire, from family to her neighbours.
I could be blamed on Maire's murder because there was evidence there. I had access to her house and that my DNA would have been on her, definitely.
But it was now Moira's next-door neighbour, Karen Walsh, who was the police's primary focus, after her account proved inaccurate.
There were discrepancies in accounts that she had been given, but that is possibly innocent.
During the investigation, anytime police spoke with Karen Walsh, she changed her account. To me, as a police officer, I became very suspicious.
News of Karen being under suspicion travelled fast and sent shockwaves through the neighbourhood.
Karen being a pharmacist, Karen dealt with elderly, frail ladies. You know, that was her job, to sort out their medication. She was used to dealing with older people and showed kindness and compassion. Never, ever did I at any time think that Karen did it.
But police suspected just that, and now had new telephone evidence that they believed placed Karen firmly in Moira's house, much later than the 1 a.m. she had said.
When the telephone inquiries came through, we can see that on the 25th of December, between 07:31 and 07:37 hours in the morning, there were a series of telephone calls. And very interestingly, one of the numbers dialed from Mrs. Rankin's landline phone was 028 915 875. And when you look at Karen Walsh's husband, Richard Durkin, his office number, there were 6 identical numbers. And again, there was another telephone call, and the telephone number dialed from Mrs. Rankin's phone to 7 numbers identical on Richard Durkin's mobile number. The caller who's making these telephone calls, they're obviously panicking, trying to dial a southern number but using a Northern Ireland code. This is someone trying to speak to Richard Durkin. And who would want to phone Richard Durkin on Christmas Day from Mrs. Rankin's landline? Karen Walsh had been in Mrs. Rankin's house between 07:31 and 07:37 and not home at 0100, as she said in her video interview. Karen Walsh could no longer be spoken to as a witness. I designated Karen Walsh as a suspect.
But just as police were preparing their case against Karen, everything changed. Moira's post-mortem had thrown up vital new evidence that would cast any suspicion over Karen Walsh into serious doubt.
There were injuries on Mrs. Rankin's body. Of concern to me was the fact is that there was slight bruising and slight bleeding around her genitalia, suggesting that there might have been some interference. It certainly was something that caused me concern.
findings were quickly fed back to the investigation team, and the news was broken to the family.
We went into the police station. The detective, he stopped, he looked at the ground and he swallowed hard. And he said, "This is very difficult. There is a strong sign that your mother was sexually assaulted." The grief then was just, it was awful.
It was chilling. It was more than upsetting. It was the shock behind it all.
I had to go and tell Mummy's two sisters and my Uncle Arthur. My sisters had to all tell their adult children that their granny had been sexually assaulted.
And I said, it can't be happening. Somebody has made a mistake. The police have made a mistake.
The revelation about the possible sexual attack forced the police to look again at whether their suspect, Karen Walsh, could actually be responsible.
The statistics of sexual assaults on females, the majority of those will be committed by males.
It was a sexually motivated crime. This is a man. It's a man that has committed this crime, and they are looking for a male suspect.
Professor Crane was of the view that there was vaginal penetration more likely to be a penis than a finger or rough object. The fractures to the ribs are consistent with sexual intercourse by someone lying on the deceased.
When I received the results of the post-mortem and had been informed that Mrs. Rankin had suffered a sexual assault, I was of the view that the offender must be male.
With the post-mortem results pointing to a male suspect, police had to reassess the evidence as they knew it. They also re-examined witness statements, which placed Karen Walsh outside Moira's house on Christmas morning.
My husband looked out because the first thing he heard was raised voices. He knew somebody was arguing. He knew there was an argument going on. And he opened the bedroom curtain and looked down. He looked out to see, and then he seen Karen sitting, and he knew that was where the raised voices were coming from. There was nobody else about.
If Carmel's statement was correct, it was proof Karen had lied to the police about her whereabouts on Christmas morning. And they now had further reason to suspect she was hiding something from them.
When police spoke to Richard Durkin, Karen Walsh's husband, he disclosed to police that Karen had asked him not to tell police that she had slept on the landing that night.
Karen Walsh told a detective that she had been in the house at the relevant time, and another neighbour told us that at about 7:30 in the morning they had seen a person they believed to be Karen Walsh sitting on the wall outside the murder scene. Those were the key things in the initial stages. Those bits of evidence were crucial.
With evidence pointing towards Karen being at the crime scene, police had no choice but to arrest her.
Karen Walsh was told she was being arrested for murder and cautioned.
I would have expected Karen Walsh to break down at that point. Murder, it gets no more serious. It's the most serious offence out there. But Karen Walsh showed no emotion.
When Karen Walsh was told she was being arrested for murder and cautioned, she replied, "I can't believe this. It's bizarre."
This is somebody that you've met and that you've had conversations with. Not a friend, but you've had a cup of coffee with him. I think that's when the anger starts, because you then have somewhere to point your anger against, or someone to point your anger against. Is very, very dark and very, very, very disturbing.
As police investigated their suspect, there was confusion and disbelief among the neighbours.
I did make it very clear to the police that I didn't want Karen Walsh blamed for something on what I had seen or heard if she didn't do it. I never, ever, ever wanted somebody framed for something that they didn't do. We wanted the right person.
Other neighbours believed there was something different about Karen.
The first time I met them, they had knocked on the doors, Karen with a bottle of spirits and Richard with the baby. Richard, he just seemed to be a very quiet gentleman. Karen, she just seemed very, very bizarre at the very beginning. She was very, very intense. She did give me the impression that she was a very volatile person. If I had have maybe said something wrong or something that she didn't agree with, I do feel that she would have exploded. Richard actually said to me at one stage that she would erupt with drink in her system.
This interview is being tape recorded. Can you have been arrested in suspicion of the murder of Maire Rankin on the 25th of December 2008 at 39 Dublin Road, Newry?
The police put their theories to Karen, but she firmly dismissed them.
I wish to make the following statement in relation to the matters raised in the last number of interviews. I had no involvement whatsoever in the death of Moira. I did not in any way assault Moira. I'm very upset at this moment. This whole thing has been a complete nightmare.
While police believed they had enough proof to proceed with a case against Karen, new evidence emerged in relation to the alleged sexual assault.
With the forensics that ensued, we recovered no male DNA, no semen. I was totally perplexed. For a male to come in and sexually assault someone and leave no trace of DNA, I just couldn't understand that.
The sex attack was a mystery and left police with a shocking theory. Had Karen Walsh staged the scene to throw police off the scent?
It was also considered, was there an attempt to simulate a sex attack to cover the fact that in fact it had been a female who had committed the murder? That was very much in our minds.
Police were confident they had their killer.
The police said, "We have charged the female and she will be in court tomorrow."
People just couldn't get to grips with how a lady of the background that Karen Walsh has could be involved in anything not only so violent, but so brutal and shocking as well.
Having been charged with the murder and indecent assault of Moira, Karen spent 7 weeks in custody before being granted bail due to her lack of previous convictions. Her bail conditions banned her from Newry, so she returned to Dublin with Richard, living in another property they owned.
I lived in the main house here with 4 of my friends, and I rented it from Karen Walsh and her husband Richard Durkin, so we were their tenants. Then when Karen Walsh got out on bail, she then moved into the granny flat here on the gable end of the house.
Residents next door witnessed Karen's increasingly erratic behaviour.
You'd hear a lot of shouting between herself and her husband, rowing. You'd hear the door slamming, the car going off, clearly Durkin driving away after they're having a row. There was nearly a sense of submissiveness to how he acted around her. Very much a case of, oh, she is in control. There's times when we heard her trying to get in our back door. There's no actual back entrance to the house from the street, so the only people who could come in our back door were them. Could hear her in the yard shouting, just going outside for smokes. There was even times when we'd caught her looking in the letterbox, watching TV, and just saw like eyes through the letterbox, nearly like something out of a cartoon. But it kind of just all meshed into the whole weird weeks where she was there and we were in there.
Other neighbours also witnessed disturbances.
Her and her husband pulled up in their car. There was a lot of slamming of doors, and I could hear lots of yelling. And it was her, and she was very, very drunk. She appeared very angry. It was hard to miss, it was very loud. She was most definitely tearing the strip off of him for whatever reason she felt necessary. I mean, I see people drunk in Dublin all the time, but I remembered that night because it seemed particularly strong.
While Karen lived under her bail conditions in Dublin, back in Newry, the police had uncovered interesting information from the scene of the crime.
Although we were convinced that Karen Walsh had used the telephone, there were no fingerprints on the phone. I find that strange. But it is possible that fingerprints didn't remain, it is possible that the fingerprints were wiped off.
By her own admission, Karen had drunk 3 to 4 glasses of vodka, but this didn't tally with how the crime scene had been left.
I've been drunk at times, and I couldn't clean up something sufficiently as to maybe distract or to send the police off in another direction.
Despite the lack of fingerprints, police knew Karen Walsh had been in the house.
Karen Walsh had admitted to being in Mrs. Rankin's bedroom and assisting Mrs. Rankin with the nebulizer. And there was DNA got on Mrs. Rankin's chest area. So really, for an investigator and from a defence point of view, Karen Walsh's DNA present there was quite easily explained.
But then there was a breakthrough, which they believed conclusively linked her to the murder.
At the bottom of the crucifix, Karen Walsh's DNA was recovered. And to me, that illustrated that Karen Walsh had the crucifix in her hand and had hit Mrs. Rankin on the face with the crucifix.
All police needed now was a motive. As with many murders, it seemed that only 2 people would ever know the whole truth, and one was dead. But then a prisoner on remand with Karen came forward and raised another theory.
That witness was able to relay information to myself that was only known within the investigation and not in the public domain.
In Newry, the community had been left reeling after Karen Walsh had been charged with murdering her neighbour, Maire Rankin.
I can't understand why Karen Walsh would have done anything like this. You know, why anybody would want to go and attack an 81-year-old vulnerable person.
There was no obvious motive, but then while preparing for the trial, another prisoner who had been on remand with Karen Walsh came forward with an enlightening account.
That witness was referred to as Witness A. That witness was able to relay information to myself that was only known within the investigation and not in the public domain.
I have thought really long and hard.
And that witness informed police that Karen Walsh had told her about the assault, about the table being knocked over.
I could almost see this house, the way she described it. It's like a row of houses. Seemed like it was an older house, 2 or 3 stories. And it was about 1 or 2 in the morning, Christmas Eve night, Christmas morning, and that she had been drinking. And she just said she'd had an argument with her husband, another argument with her husband. She had gone over because she was upset and she wanted to continue drinking. And the older lady, she said she started lecturing her. You know, all this drinking and everything else, telling me that I was ruining my life. I had a beautiful wee boy. But being so drunk that she just didn't want to listen. The way she said it to me, it was like the lady had taken hold of her and said, "Look, listen to me." And she said she pushed her away, and the lady lost her balance and hit her head.
The reason that she attacked Mrs. Rankin that night was the fact that Mrs. Rankin had admonished her regarding her drinking habits and to go home, the fact that she's a young family.
She said she hit her with a crucifix. She didn't realise how hard she'd hit her because it broke. I said, "Karen, you just told me you killed that woman." Then she went on to put something into her to make it look like somebody had tried to have sex with us or tried to abuse this woman sexually. And I actually walked out of her cell at that point. And I said, I told her, I said, "Karen, that's really sick." She was somebody's mum. Sorry.
Despite the revelations from Witness A, her testimony was never presented to the jury, due to concerns over her credibility, being that she was serving
Abuse this woman sexually. And I actually walked out of her cell at that point. And I said, I told her, I said, "Karen, that's really sick." She was somebody's mum. Sorry.
Despite the revelations from Witness A, her testimony was never presented to the jury, due to concerns over her credibility, being that she was serving time for fraud. The police also had strong forensic evidence against Karen.
Good evening. A neighbour of an 81-year-old woman who was found dead in her Newry home on Christmas Day has appeared in court charged with her murder.
Today, Karen Walsh, who's 42 and lives next door at 37 Dublin Road, was in court charged with her murder.
With all the things going on, makes you think, is everything going to be okay? Is there some way she's going to wiggle out of it?
I would ask myself, you know, is she crazy? Is she mad? But I don't actually believe she is. I just think she's really bad, really evil.
Karen Walsh was odd from day one of the court. You know, they read out the injuries that were sustained by Mummy. And I looked around the court and everybody were visibly shaken by what they were hearing. She just sat and looked straight ahead and like, it's nothing to do with me.
You'd think there would be some sense of remorse, that she'd be looking at her feet, that she wouldn't want to look into the eyes of the children who had lost their mother at her hands. And she stared us out.
Even when I was confronted with aspects of the brutality of her murder, the image of her hands and the bruised nails, it wasn't anger, it was desperate sadness.
Throughout the trial, Karen Walsh maintained her innocence, claiming Moira was unwell when she left at 1 a.m. and someone else must have entered the house after her.
It took the jury less than 2 hours this afternoon to convict Karen Walsh. The judge told her she'd carried out a brutal attack on a completely defenceless woman.
Karen Walsh received a 20-year sentence, which is the longest that any female in Northern Ireland has got. What she put the family through over those 3 years was totally uncalled for.
She didn't really flinch at all. She didn't show any particular emotion. It was almost as if she didn't understand what was happening. And as she was being led away, she didn't even turn back to her husband, but said to the court that she was innocent.
"9 years on, for those residents still living on Dublin Road, Moira's murder has changed things forever.
I would have always kept my door open once upon a time, whereas now I close my door. You just didn't feel as safe as prior to this. Karen Walsh had changed all this.
There's a new family in Moira's old house, but her memory lives on.
How she lived her life was quite unremarkable in global terms, in national terms, in family terms. As a mother, as a wife, as a granny, was quite remarkable.
And there are times when I miss her so much, I am overwhelmed. There are times it just hits me and I'm in floods of tears. It's not the way she should have died.